Back then, when the Nigerian financial environment was still at its infancy, one could not transfer or move money by electronic means. There were nothing like apps, ATMs, nor any form of telephonic way of transferring money that one could remember today. Most payments and receipts were done on cash and carry basis. Hence, stories about armed robbers cutting away millions of naira, which one company wants to use for end of month salary payment, were very rampant. Today, at the click of a button, one can sit in the comfort of their homes and transfer millions of naira to any part of the country and even beyond. At the time we are talking about, special and trusted courier companies were paid to move such monies from place to place. Such courier companies, on the other hand, had to do these movements with the use of special purpose vehicles and drivers. This was where the likes of Ike and Ade became necessary. Before the company employs anyone, they had to do some very rigorous checks about the person's background. Such checks were properly done before these guys were employed. The two of them were to work together, one person driving while the other person handles the cash and other expensive materials. These expensive materials included things like gold and other jewelry. Back then, gold, apart from its ornamental value, acts as another way of storing money for some people. Their terms of services is such that one person will do the driving for 1 week while the other person handles the cash elements. The roles are reversed the next week. The company uses that as an internal control measure of some sort. The company placed a lot of trust on these employees, but to ensure that they do not become easily corrupt or fall prey to some devilish tendencies, the company pays them very well, well above what they could be paid by other companies out there. But the problem is that if stealing is in your DNA, there is just nothing anyone can do about it. Very soon, your true colors will materialize. Every month, a form of audit was done and reports rendered to management. But one thing that you would understand is that the criminal tries to stay a step ahead of the owner, especially if the person is a trusted employee. One day, Ade removed 10,000 pounds from his regular supplies. How he did it was unimaginable to his colleague Ike. Ike just observed that Ade was beginning to put on some very expensive wares. In a company like that, it was the policy of the company to start some discreet investigation. If a staff begins to sort of start living beyond their means. It was Ike that first noticed the trend. He, however, could not escalate it because he was not really sure. He was, however, aware that Ade's dad had a number of commercial rental properties, most of which Ade was managing for the dad because of his advanced age. Ade disclosed to him that he was raking in some commission from that business. He does not want it disclosed because the company may sack him for conflicting interests. So Ike was sold on that idea. Meanwhile, Ade was acting the Father Christmas to Ike. They used to go to a nearby Mama Put joint to eat. Things were becoming more expensive in the joint and people were beginning to complain. But not Ade. It got to a point that he was taking responsibility for Ike's feeding expenses. Ike was not comfortable with all that. But what the hell, he thought to himself. If the audit that is carried out weekly does not uncover anything wrong, then he will assume that all is well. He does not want to be seen as raising a false alarm. especially when Ade had told him about the business he manages for the dad. Time to time, Ade will buy some expensive items. These items will be supplied to him in their office where he and Ike shares whenever they are not in the field. Ike began to observe that Ade was beginning to exhibit some occasional nervousness. Their office has a window facing the car park. Each time a car drives into the car park, Ade will become agitated and try to see who is coming out of the car. The fact that he would now become jumpy each time a knock comes to the door makes Ike a little bit worried. Ike had, however, discreetly checked all their records over the past 1 month, but did not see anything amiss, or so it appears. The internal auditors do not usually say when they will come. They just come out of the blues and begin to carry out their audit. The auditors carry out their extensive routine checks any time of the year. This is to enable them catch anyone who is fraudulent unawares. In the course of this audit, Ade and Ike had gone to the fields. They were gone for just a day and will be back next day. As a result, Ade was not available to cover his tracks properly as at the time the auditors came. In the course of their investigation, they discovered that a page in the books of Ade was missing. He had cleverly removed the page to make it appear as if that customer does not exist at all. He, however, forgot that there was a copy in the office ledger. For you to have a clean slate, the entry in your own books must correspond with what was also entered in the company's ledger. An explanation will be needed in any case where they do not correspond. Ike and Ade returned to the office while the auditors were still checking what went wrong. As soon as Ade observed that his cover had been blown, he quickly disappeared. The matter was quickly reported to management and Ade was summoned. But when the messenger got to Ade's office, he could not be found. Even Ike was not aware of his movements. For all he knew, he must be around somewhere. Ike was very surprised about his disappearance. They have just arrived at the office premises a few minutes back. Ike was not even aware that the auditors were around. Ike eventually got wind of what was happening. He heard of the missing £10,000. He began to put two and two together. He remembered the unusual expenses that Ade was making. He thought of all the new materials Ade had been buying over the past 1 month. What bothered him most was the way he disappeared quickly into thin air. Then he also remembered how he was always jumpy each time a car drives into the premises. They were working together and he is supposed to have noticed these red flags. Some may say. Not that he did not notice them, but the fact that Ade claimed that he does some business for his father did not help matters at all. But that is not the point now. The point is, where has he gone? Throughout that day, he did not show up. His sudden disappearance was enough evidence to show that he really committed the act. Next day, the matter was reported to the police and they began to look for Ade. Their first port of call was his house. When the police got there, they were told that Ade and his family had left the place some months back, but that they do not know his new address. Obviously, he may have been planning this deal long time ago. The police began to ask questions about his whereabouts. They were tipped off and given the addresses of about 2 women that he was having affairs with. Initially, the police came in plain clothes and did not disclose what he had done. But when they mentioned the staggering amount that melted away under his care, the information began to come pouring in. Some said they saw him in the house of one of the women and that he was behaving very nervy. Others said he was last seen in the premises of the other woman. Addresses were, however, collected and the police continued the search. They were very methodical in their search. They knew that The man had money to spend. With the amount of money in his possession, he could buy his way through any obstacle. When they got to the house of the women, he was not there. They were told that the last time they saw him was about 2 days ago. He gave them the impression that he was traveling, but did not tell them where he was headed. But when they heard the staggering amount that was connected with his disappearance, they quickly came up with an address in his hometown. That was where he was found and arrested. The police took him into custody and began to investigate. When they caught him, he was looking very sickly and nervous. It was discovered that he had a history of high blood pressure. But because of his hiding and running from one place to another, he failed to take his medication. He was eventually taken to the hospital, where he spent about 2 weeks on the hospital bed, all the time under the watchful eyes of the police. The police were there to ensure that it does not suddenly disappear. We have had stories of people who were under such investigation, but somewhere along the line, they vanished under mysterious circumstances. The money in question was too much, and everything possible must be done to bring the money back to its rightful owner. After about 2 weeks, Ade was released from the hospital, and the police continued with their investigation to get him say where he kept the money. After some days of very tough questioning by the local police, they still could not make headway. The case was eventually transferred to a special unit of the police for further investigation. While the investigation was going on, he was later allowed bail so as to go and get himself some medical attention. They have allowed him to do so surreptitiously so that he could lead them to where he hid the money. At least that was the intention of the police. It was during this period that Ike told him about the very powerful Juju man who could ensure that the case was forgotten. All that he needed was just pay some money and the case will simply disappear. Meanwhile, Ike had got to know that he really took the money. He thought, and rightly too, that he had a lot of money in his possession. Ike had therefore arranged with the police to assist in reaching where he kept the money. After some time, the company began to threaten to close this arm of its operation if the money was not returned to its coffers. Any attempt to close that arm of the company's operation would spell disaster for a number of its loyal employees and members of their family. The workers eventually held a secret meeting to see how they can assist. At that point, none of them wanted to lose their only means of livelihood and the consequent effects on their family members. That was how Ike intervened to see how he can be the arrowhead of a secret plan hatched by members of staff to get the money from him. This was, however, in collaboration with the police. That was when Ike told him about the powerful Juju man. They were to visit the Juju man next day to get the deal sealed. Ade was very happy about what Ike told him and decided to do a follow-through. Meanwhile, Ike had arranged with one of the police detectives to act as the Juju man on that day. He had every detail about Ade and how much he stole. So the next day, Ike and Ade set out to see the Juju man. The Juju man was said to live in one of the jungles outside the outskirts of the city. They first started by motorbike and drove for hours into the jungle. They then got to a point where it became impossible to use bikes. They now had to resort to trekking. They trekked for close to 2 miles and Ade was already beginning to pant like a sick dog. They now got to a small stream that they had to cross by foot as there was no other means of making the journey. Ike informed him that the Juju man's place was just around the corner after the small stream. So they waded into the stream, which was about waist level. Immediately they crossed the stream, an object that looked roundish and tall appeared in their front. By this time, it was getting a bit dark, and the only light that kept the environment lit was coming from that object. At one point, the object will maintain one height and suddenly it will begin to grow in a very fearful manner to acquire another height. Then it began to talk in a voice that appeared muffled, but audible enough for Ade to understand what was being said. The object read out Ade's history, including his name and that of his wife and children. It mentioned how much was missing in the office and their purpose for coming here. It told Ade that his wishes will be granted as long as Ade goes to get a certain amount of money for sacrifice to the gods. The most important part was that the money he will pay has to come from a section of the main money he took from the company. For quick measure, the money must be brought before 12 noon next day. Ade, who was very nervous all this while, quickly agreed to do as instructed. He was told that once the money was paid, he can go home, rest assured that the gods will do as he requested. They quickly turned around and left. Ike quickly tipped off the police and the surveillance team was placed on Ade's trail. Next day at about 8 a.m., Ade left home for the place he kept the money. He appeared to have lost all caution and failed to notice a number of men who were just riding past him on bikes. Neither did he notice a white car that was following him in the distance. When he got to the front of a lonely building in the distance, he slowed down, looked back, looked to the left, and then to the right. He made as if he was going to continue the walk. He later retraced his steps, blew a certain whistle with his mouth, and the middle-aged woman opened the only door in front and he entered. The time was 9 a.m. After about 30 minutes, he left the building with an envelope tucked under his armpit. That was when the police swooped on the building, knocked on the door, and after a few minutes, the same woman opened the door unsuspectingly, and the police rushed in. Eventually, the monies were found intact. He had just been able to use a small amount up to that point. He does not want to attract any attention by then, or so he thought. The intention of the police at that point was to ensure that the money was there. So they allowed him to leave but kept him under surveillance. They knew he would soon come back after making the payment to the Juju man. That was when they planned to arrest him. The police wanted to have a cast iron evidence against him, an evidence that cannot be controverted before any judge. So they waited. The woman was initially nervous of the presence of the police. She was not ready to cooperate because Ade will do her harm. She told the police that she and Ade have been having an affair. Before she met Ade, her hair salon around town was in shambles. She did not have money to re-equip the place, and the rent had been due for 2 years. She was not able to pay her son's school fees, and the son had been sent away from school. Her life was miserable before she met Ade. He took care of those responsibilities as soon as they met. Since then, she had been doing a few things to assist in what he called his business, including this one. She had initially refused to get involved in his business, but he threatened to retrieve the monies he spent on her businesses and make her life miserable again. The police therefore promised her that if she is ready to cooperate, they will put him away so long that he will not remember her again. She then agreed and began to cooperate with them. They then laid in wait for him. Meanwhile, Ike was waiting for him at a prearranged junction. When Ade came, he was very nervous and anxious. He wanted a reassurance from Ike that the Juju will work as agreed. Ike assured him that the Juju man has a lot of powers and had not failed before. He reeled out a number of false examples of people whose case the Juju man had handled in the past. So off they went. This time in black clothes, but as tall as an electric pole. with click lights blazing from what appears to look like his eyes. He spoke in that unusual voice again. He told them that he had seen the money they brought. The Juju man assured Ade that he should not worry. Even if they decide to take him to court, that nothing will come out of it. He further instructed Ade to go and remove the money from the house of his mistress immediately because he cannot be trusted. This is to quickly lure him into the trap already laid by the police. He told them to drop the money and turn around and go. On no account should they look back. As soon as they dropped the money and turned to go, they heard a very eerie sound. The type you hear from a cinema screen when a group of lions are devouring their prey. Ade's heart sank. To put effect to the whole drama, Ike took to his heels, and Ade, not wanting to be left behind, followed suit. As soon as they got to town, Ade made alternative arrangements for the money to be relocated. Once done, he quickly decided to go fetch the money. Meanwhile, the police were waiting for him inside the house. As soon as he entered, he went straight to the room where the box containing the money was kept. When he saw the money, his eyes began to shine like a monkey that was offered some bananas. The greed on his face did not allow him to remember any form of caution. Or could it be that he was relying on the assurance that the Juju man gave him? One cannot really be sure. He was in the process when the police, who were already laying siege on the house, showed up. Eventually, the monies were found intact. Ade later appeared in court. All the time he was appearing in court, he never showed any form of remorse. He was always full of confidence. He relied heavily on the assurances given to him by the Juju man. So he always showed up brimming with smiles like someone who had just won a lottery. It never occurred to him that he was marching straight to jail. After a number of appearances, the gavel came down and he was given a long term to go and spend in jail. That was when reality dawned on him. He thought about his wife and children. He saw his life crumbling. He thought about his aged parents in their hometown. None of these thoughts made any sense to him anymore. He had promised his parents that he was coming home in a few weeks' time. He had not seen them for about 5 years now. He was still thinking over this when he was jolted to reality by the cold feel of the handcuffs that were being placed around his wrists by the police before being led away by the prison staff. He was led into a prison vehicle and ferried to a prison yard where he was going to spend his jail time. Ade's case is one of greed taken too far. When people become too greedy, they will bite a piece that will choke them in the throat. Once that happens, such persons are quickly identified by society and are put away in a place far removed from the prying eyes of sane people. Thank you for listening. Please share, like and comment. This will help us to serve you better. Bye.